I'm Nora, 28, sitting on a dusty Virginia road, my backpack heavy with the weight of betrayal. I'm pregnant alone watching my fiancé Caleb's truck vanish, its taillights fading into the horizon's haze, carrying our savings, my phone, everything I trusted him with. The gravel bites my palms as I kneel, the summer heat pressing against my skin, the air thick with the scent of dry earth. My heart pounds, a mix of shock and a stubborn spark of hope. In my bag, a crumpled photo of my grandfather's old house, its edges worn from years of being tucked away, is my only refuge now. I see his weathered hands in my mind, building that house board by board, telling me it would always be mine. A breeze stirs the dust, cooling my face, but it can't touch the ache inside. How did I end up here, stranded with nothing but a choice to keep going? Have you ever stood at a crossroads, forced to rebuild from nothing? I'd love to know where you're watching from. Like and subscribe to join me on this journey. 3 days ago, I was in our cramped Richmond apartment, folding tiny baby clothes into a cardboard box, my hands trembling with excitement and a whisper of nerves. I'm Nora, 28, and I thought Caleb and I were on the edge of something new, a life away from the city's hum. The countryside house my grandfather left me was a promise of better days, a place to raise our child under wide skies. I hummed a lullaby, picturing a nursery with sunlight streaming through lace curtains, a rocking chair creaking softly by the window. Caleb was across the room, shoving clothes into his duffel bag, his phone buzzing like an angry wasp. I asked who kept texting, my voice light but curious, but he muttered, "Work," and turned away. His shoulders stiff. His refusal to look at me stung, a sharp twinge I tried to ignore. I zipped up a suitcase, the sound loud in the quiet room, trying to shake the unease creeping up my spine. We were supposed to be a team, building a future for our child. His bag was heavier than mine, a zipper pocket bulging, and he kept checking it, his fingers restless, almost protective. "What's in there?" I asked, forcing a laugh to keep things soft. "Just work stuff, Nora." He snapped, his voice cutting like glass, making me flinch. I swallowed hard, telling myself he was stressed, that moving was weighing on us both. The truck was loaded by noon, our life squeezed into the back boxes stacked unevenly, my hopes teetering on top. I climbed in, my hand on my belly, feeling the baby kick a quiet vow. Caleb gripped the wheel, silent, his jaw clenched like he was chewing on secrets. I tried talking about names, maybe Lily or Grace, imagining our daughter's giggle, but he just nodded, eyes fixed on the road, distant. The air felt thick, heavy with something unsaid, like a storm gathering. At a gas station, I stretched my legs, the pavement hot under my sneakers, the air smelling of gasoline and summer dust. A clerk named Sheila, her gray hair tied back, caught my eye and asked, "You okay, hun?" Her voice was warm, maternal, and it hit me harder than I expected, stirring a doubt I couldn't name. I laughed it off, but her question lingered, a crack in my certainty. Caleb came back, tossing a soda can into the trash, and I saw a crumpled receipt slip from his pocket. I picked it up, my heart sinking as I read a one-way bus ticket dated tomorrow in his name alone. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister Hannah. "Don't trust him, Nora." I deleted it, irritation flaring, my fingers trembling. She'd always called Caleb slick, but I wasn't ready to believe her. Back in the truck, I watched him, his hands twitching, his silence louder than the engine's hum. I wanted to ask about the ticket, but my voice caught fear tightening my throat. The road stretched on endless, and the distance between us grew with every mile. The truck rumbled down the highway, the countryside blurring past fields of green, fading into dusk. The sky bruised with twilight. The silence between Caleb and me was heavier than the boxes in the back, his one-way bus ticket burning in my mind. I'm Nora, 28, and I wanted to confront him, to demand the truth, but my tongue felt heavy, scared of what he'd say. I fiddled with the radio, landing on a country song about a woman left behind, its twang slicing through me, the lyrics too close to my fears. Caleb didn't flinch, his eyes locked on the road, knuckles white on the wheel, his face a mask I couldn't read. I tried filling the quiet, talking about the house, how I'd paint the nursery a soft yellow, how we'd sit on the porch watching fireflies with our baby, their glow dancing in the dark. He gave a half nod. his jaw twitching like my words were an irritation. My stomach churned the baby's kicks, mixing with a dread I couldn't name. I reached for my water bottle, my elbow brushing his bag still wedged between us, its weight unnatural like it held secrets I wasn't meant to know. "Can we stop for a bit?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted, barely cutting through the engine's drone. He sighed, sharp and irritated, pulling into a gravel turnout, dust clouding the air, sticking to my skin. He got out, muttering about checking the tires, his boots crunching as he walked away, leaving me alone in the cab. I stayed in the truck, my hands trembling as I unzipped his bag's side pocket, my heart pounding. Inside was an envelope, plain, no name. I pulled out a bank statement, our joint account, but the balance was gut-wrenchingly low, thousands gone in withdrawals I didn't make dated weeks back. My heart raced, my fingers fumbling as I shoved it back, the paper crinkling loudly. Caleb was outside, pacing his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low, secretive, glancing at me like I was a stranger. Sheila's question from the gas station echoed, "Are you okay?" I wasn't, and I knew it now. The truth settling like a stone. I thought of Hannah's text, the warning I'd dismissed, her words sharp in my memory. I'd pushed her away, too stubborn to listen, but doubt clawed at me. When Caleb climbed back in, I forced the words out. "Why's our account so low?" My voice cracked, betraying my fear. He froze, then shrugged. "Just bills, Nora. Relax." But his eyes darted away, and I knew he was lying. The truck lurched forward, the engine's roar drowning my thoughts, but something in me had stopped moving. I clutched my backpack, the receipt and withdrawals heavy as stones, my hands shaking with the weight of betrayal. We were supposed to be building a life, but all I felt was the ground crumbling, leaving me nowhere to stand. The truck slowed to a stop on that empty Virginia road, dust swirling in the fading light, the sky heavy with twilight's gray. I sat frozen, my hands gripping my backpack, the bank statement's numbers searing my mind. Caleb turned to me, his face hard, not the man I'd loved for years, not the one who'd promised me forever. "Get out, Nora," he said, his voice cold as the gravel beneath us, sharp as a blade. I blinked, my breath catching in my throat. What I whispered, praying I'd misheard, my heart hammering. "I can't do this anymore," he said, staring past me, his eyes empty, hollow. "You, the baby, this life. It's too much." Each word was a knife twisting deeper, shredding the future I'd built in my head. "You're leaving me here?" I asked, my voice rising sharp with disbelief, my hands trembling on my lap. He didn't answer, just pointed to the door, his face unreadable, a stranger's face. I grabbed my backpack, my legs unsteady as I stepped onto the gravel, the air cool against my flushed skin, the scent of dust and diesel choking me. He tossed my coat out after me, a crumpled heap in the dirt, and before I could find words, the truck roared away, its taillights fading into the dusk, taking our savings, my phone, our entire future. I stood there, pregnant, alone, my throat burning with unshed tears, the silence deafening. How had I trusted him so completely? I started walking the road, stretching endlessly, my sneakers crunching against stones, each step a reminder of my isolation. The air was sharp, but my face felt hot anger and hurt tangling inside me like thorns. I thought of Tara, his coworker, her smug smile at a company picnic months ago, her hand brushing his arm, lingering too long. Had they planned this? My mind replayed every red flag I'd ignored, his late nights, his vague excuses about work, the way he'd pull away when I reached for him. I'd been so blind, so desperate to believe we were solid. After hours, my feet throbbing, my belly heavy, a flickering neon sign appeared, a rundown motel with peeling paint and a sagging roof. I dug through my backpack, finding $20 crumpled in a side pocket, all I had left in the world. The clerk, Ray, a gruff man with tired eyes and a stained cap, took my money without a word, sliding a key across the counter. The room smelled of stale smoke, the bed sagging under a thin blanket, the walls stained with years of neglect. I sat on its edge, my hands on my belly, feeling the baby move, a faint flutter against the chaos. "You're all I have now," I whispered, my voice breaking, barely audible. I tried the motel phone to call Hannah, but the line was dead, sealing my isolation, cutting me off from the world. Anger surged, not just at Caleb, but at myself for missing the signs, for letting him unravel me. I pulled out a letter from my grandfather tucked in my bag. His handwriting shaky but warm, a lifeline from years ago. "Trust your own strength, Nora," it read. I clutched it, tears spilling at last, hot on my cheeks, wondering if I had any strength left to find. I lay on the motel bed, the springs creaking under me, my grandfather's letter crumpled in my fist, its edges soft from my grip. The room's dim light flickered, casting shadows that seemed to press against me, heavy as my thoughts. My mind churned, replaying Caleb's cold words, the truck vanishing into the night, leaving me with nothing but dust and despair. I saw Tara's face, her laugh at that picnic, the way she'd leaned too close to him, her eyes too knowing, too confident. Had she been in on this from the start? I pressed my hands to my face, trying to block the memories flooding in a relentless tide. Last month I'd caught him texting late, his screen tilted away, his smile too quick, too polished when he said, "It's just work." I'd believed him because I thought love meant trust, because I wanted us to be real, unshakable. Now alone I saw every lie I'd let slide, every excuse I'd accepted. My mother's voice rang in my head, warning me about his charm, her words sharp from her own scars, but I'd dismissed her, thinking her new marriage made her cynical, distant. I stood pacing the tiny room, my breath uneven, the walls feeling closer with every step, the air thick with stale smoke and regret. The baby kicked hard, and I stopped gripping the chipped dresser, its edge rough under my fingers, grounding me. I was supposed to be building a home, not stranded with nothing but a fading dream. I rummaged through my backpack, desperate for an anchor, and found a photo of Caleb and me at the beach last summer, his arm around me, our laughter frozen in time, a moment I thought was ours. I tore it in half, my chest, heaving the pieces, drifting to the floor like ash, their edges curling. How could he do this? Not just to me, but to our child, our future. I thought of Hannah. Her text, I'd deleted her voice. I'd ignored her warning clear now. She'd seen through him, but I'd pushed her away, too proud to admit I might be wrong. The motel's silence was suffocating, broken only by a distant car horn outside, sharp and fleeting. Ray had left a styrofoam cup of coffee by my door, a small gesture that made my throat tighten, a kindness I didn't expect. I sipped it cold and bitter, like the truth sinking in sharp and unyielding. Caleb hadn't just left. He'd planned this, taken everything, left me to drown in the wreckage. My eyes burned, but the tears were gone, replaced by a hollow ache. I looked at my grandfather's letter again, his words blurring through my exhaustion. Trust your own strength. But what strength? I was pregnant, broke alone, with no way to fight. I stuffed the letter into my pocket, grabbed my backpack, and stepped into the night. The air cool on my face, the stars faint above. The road to my grandfather's house was all I had, but each step felt heavier, like I was walking toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. The bus rattled along the winding Virginia roads, each jolt shaking my bones as I clutched my backpack, my only tether to the world. I'm Nora, 28, pregnant, chasing the ghost of my grandfather's house, the last shred of hope I had left. The driver, a wiry man with a gray beard and weary eyes, glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his pity sharper than the cold seeping through the cracked window. I paid with coins scraped from my bag's bottom, each one a reminder of how little remained there, clink loud in the quiet bus. The countryside blurred past fields of tall grass swaying under a gray sky, their tips catching the fading light, but all I could see was Caleb's truck, fading, my life stolen in its wake. The bus dropped me at a dirt path, the driver muttering directions to a house a mile off, his voice gruff but not unkind. My legs ached as I trudged forward, the weight of my belly pulling me down, my sneakers sinking into soft, muddy earth, the air heavy with the scent of rain. The house came into view, its sagging roof and cracked windows like a broken vow, its silhouette stark against the overcast sky. Weeds choked the yard, tall and tangled, swaying in the breeze. But a faint glow from inside stopped me cold, a flicker that didn't belong. Someone was there. My heart pounded as I pushed open the creaking gate, mud clinging to my shoes, the sound loud in the stillness. I stepped onto the porch boards, groaning under my weight, and peered through a grimy window, the glass cool against my palm. A woman stood in the living room arranging furniture like she belonged, her movements deliberate. It was Tara, Caleb's coworker. Her dark hair pulled back, a smirk playing on her lips. As she shifted my grandfather's old rocking chair, its wood scuffed from years of use. My breath caught rage flaring in my chest, hot and sharp. What was she doing in my house? I pushed the door open, hinges screaming, and Tara spun around, her eyes narrowing, a flash of surprise quickly masked. Nora. She said, her voice laced with mock surprise, syrupy and sharp. What are you doing here? This is my house. I snapped my hands, trembling, my voice louder than I meant, echoing in the empty room. Caleb gave it to me, she said, stepping closer, her smirk widening, her eyes glinting with confidence. He signed it over weeks ago. Said you didn't need it anymore. My knees buckled, the room tilting, my breath shallow. Signed it over. This house was my grandfather's legacy. The only thing I had left, his love woven into its beams. I thought of his journal hidden somewhere in these walls, filled with his dreams for me, his hopes for my future. You're lying, I said, my voice shaking, barely holding together. But Tara laughed, sharp and cruel, the sound cutting through me. Check the deed, sweetheart, she said, tossing a folded paper onto the table, its edges crisp. Caleb wanted me to have it. We're selling it next month. My vision blurred, fury burning through me. My hands clenched. She knew about the baby, about my loss, and stood there smug like she'd already won. I wanted to scream, to tear the paper apart, but my body froze, her words a weight I couldn't lift. I stood in my grandfather's house, the air thick with Tara's smugness, her words cutting like glass, each one a fresh wound. My hands shook as I snatched the deed from the table. Its ink stark, Caleb's signature scrawled at the bottom, a betrayal in black and white, undeniable. This can't be real, I said, my voice cracking, barely holding together. But Tara crossed her arms, her eyes glinting with triumph, her stance bold. Oh, it's real, she said, her tone dripping with certainty. He told me you were too weak to handle this place, Nora. Said you'd drag him down with your dreams. My chest burned, each breath a fight, my mind flashing to Caleb's promises, our late-night talks about raising our child here, his hand warm on mine, his voice soft with plans. Lies, everyone unraveling now. Tara stepped closer, her voice low, venomous, each word deliberate. He's with me now, she said. We've been planning this for months. The house, the money, it's ours. You're just collateral damage. My knees nearly gave out, her words crushing me heavy as stone. My baby innocent was caught in this web of deceit, her future stolen before it began. I wanted to scream, to shove her out, but my body wouldn't move, frozen by shock. Footsteps sounded outside, heavy, deliberate crunching on the gravel path. The door creaked open, and Caleb stood there, his face blank, as if he hadn't shattered my world, as if he were just passing through. Nora, he said, calm, like we were discussing the weather, his voice infuriatingly steady. You shouldn't be here. My vision swam, fury and grief colliding, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it. You gave her my house, I choked out. Holding up the deed, my hand shaking, the paper trembling. He shrugged his eyes, cold, distant, like I was nothing. It's better this way. You'll figure it out. Tara laughed, leaning against him, her hand on his arm, staking her claim, their closeness a fresh cut. I looked around, the peeling wallpaper, the dusty floors, every corner steeped in my grandfather's memory, his laughter, his stories. This was my home, my daughter's future, and they were stealing it, tearing it away. I stumbled back, my hand on my belly, feeling her kick, a reminder of all I'd lost, her tiny movements grounding me. Tara's voice sliced through again, sharp and final. Get out or I'll call the cops. You're trespassing. My heart pounded, my thoughts a chaotic swirl of rage and despair, my breath shallow. I was pregnant, homeless, betrayed, a stranger in my own legacy. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, the walls closing in their faces, blurring as the rooms spun around me, the weight of their betrayal suffocating. I stood frozen in my grandfather's house, Tara's threat to call the police echoing, Caleb's cold eyes piercing me, unyielding. I'm Nora, 28, pregnant, and something inside me clicked, a spark of defiance igniting. I wasn't leaving. This was my home, my daughter's future, my grandfather's gift. I gripped the deed, its paper creasing under my fingers, and shoved it into my pocket, its weight a reminder of my fight. "You don't get to decide," that I said, my voice steady, despite the storm inside each word, a small rebellion. Tara scoffed, her lips curling, but I turned away, my eyes scanning for something to hold on to, something real. I spotted a loose floorboard by the fireplace, a memory from childhood summers here, when I'd hide trinkets with my grandfather. I knelt, ignoring their stares, and pried it up my nails, scraping wood splinters, biting my fingers, the effort grounding me. Inside was my grandfather's journal, its leather cover, worn pages filled with his dreams for this house, for me, his handwriting a lifeline. I held it close, a fire kindling in my chest, warm and fierce. "I'm not trespassing," I said, standing tall, my voice firm. "This is mine." Tara rolled her eyes, but Caleb shifted uneasy, his confidence cracking, his hands twitching. I stepped outside, my heart pounding the air cool against my flushed skin, and saw Edith, the neighbor, on her porch, her eyes steady like she knew my fight, her presence a quiet anchor. "I need help," I said, crossing the yard, my steps deliberate. She nodded, pulling out her phone to call Marcus, a lawyer, a friend of my grandfather's. "His voice will carry weight," she said, her tone firm, her eyes kind. Back inside, I faced Tara again. "Show me the real deed," I said, my voice unwavering, cutting through the tension. She hesitated, her smirk fading, her fingers fidgeting. "I'm calling a lawyer," I added. "And if that deed's fake, you're the one trespassing." Caleb grabbed her arm, whispering urgently, but I didn't care, their panic irrelevant now. In the kitchen, I found a phone number scratched on the wall, Marcus's name beside it, faded but clear, a relic of my grandfather's trust. I dialed, my hands trembling but sure, and poured out my story, my voice steady despite the chaos. He listened, his voice calm, resolute, cutting through my fear. "Come to my office tomorrow," he said. "We'll sort this out." I hung up, feeling the baby kick, a reminder I wasn't alone, her movement a quiet strength. I walked back to the porch, the journal in my hands, and stood under the stars, their light faint but steady, the night air cool on my face. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of control, a sense I could fight for what was mine, my daughter's future, my legacy. I stood in the kitchen, my grandfather's journal pressed against my chest, Marcus's promise ringing in my ears, a steady anchor. I'm Nora, 28, and for the first time since Caleb's truck vanished, I felt a pulse of strength, like a fire catching warm and persistent. I walked back to the living room where Tara stood by the window, arms crossed, her face tight. Caleb silent beside her, his eyes on the floor. I didn't look at them. I moved to the old dining table, its wood scratched from years of family dinners, laughter long faded, and set the journal down, its weight grounding me like a root. I'm calling my sister, I said, my voice calm but unyielding, each word deliberate. Hannah was right about you, Caleb, and I should have listened. Tara snorted, but I ignored her, digging through my backpack for a scrap of paper with Hannah's number, my fingers brushing a small key forgotten tucked in a side pocket from my grandfather's last letter. It felt like a sign, its cool metal sparking hope, a promise I couldn't yet name. I dialed Hannah from Edith's phone, my heart racing, the line crackling faintly. Her voice came through soft but urgent, a lifeline across the miles. I'm sorry, I said, my voice catching. You were right. Can you come? She didn't hesitate. I'm on my way, Nora, she said, her words, a bridge mending our years apart. I hung up, a weight lifting like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself, a fragment of trust. I turned to Tara and Caleb. You can stay tonight, I said, but this house isn't yours. I'm fighting for it. Tara's laugh was hollow, her eyes flickering with doubt, her confidence unraveling. Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it, his shoulders slumping, his fight gone. I walked to the porch, needing air, the night cool against my skin, and saw Edith watching, her face kind but fierce, her silhouette steady in the moonlight. She handed me a thermos of tea, its warmth seeping into my hands, its scent earthy and calming. Your grandfather never gave up, she said, her voice low. Sure. Neither will you. I nodded, sipping the tea, its bitterness fading into comfort, grounding me. The next morning, I took a bus to the library in town, the key in my pocket, the journal under my arm, its leather warm from my grip. I sat at a dusty computer searching county records for the house's title, my hands shaking but steady, each click a step forward, a reclaiming. I found my grandfather's will naming me heir no trace of Caleb, the words clear as daylight. My breath caught hope surging sharp and bright. I printed it, the paper warm in my hands, and slipped it into the journal, its pages a shield. As I left, the key glinted in the sunlight, and I knew it unlocked something in the house. Something my grandfather left for me, a secret waiting. I stood still, the wind brushing my face, my hand on my belly, the baby kicking. I looked toward the house, my resolve hardening, my steps firm. I wasn't just fighting for a building. I was fighting for my daughter, for myself, for a future I could shape. I slipped the key into my pocket, my eyes fixed on the road ahead, the horizon calling. I'm Nora, 28, standing in my grandfather's house, the air heavy with the weight of my defiance, the walls holding my resolve. The journal and will from the library are under my arm, proof this place is mine, undeniable. Tara's gone quiet, her smirk replaced by a tight frown, her eyes darting nervously, and Caleb won't meet my gaze. His hands shoved deep in his pockets, his silence heavy. I called Marcus, the lawyer, and he's here now. His voice steady on the phone earlier, promising answers, a path forward. Hannah's coming too, her car speeding from Richmond to stand by me, her loyalty a lifeline. I sweep the dusty floor, each stroke a claim, the broom's bristles scratching softly, a rhythm grounding me like a heartbeat. Tara watches from the corner, her arms crossed, her posture stiff. You're wasting your time, she says, but her voice wavers, lacking its earlier venom. I don't answer, just keep sweeping the dust swirling in the light, my hands steady. Marcus arrives. His suit wrinkled, but his eyes sharp, carrying a briefcase stuffed with papers, their edges worn from use. He spreads them on the table, pointing to the signature on Tara's deed, his finger steady. It's forged, he says, calm but certain, the loops in Caleb's name not matching county records, a flaw exposed. My heart leaps, but I stay silent, letting the truth settle heavy and real. Tara's face pales, her fingers twitching, her confidence crumbling. Caleb steps forward, his voice low, almost pleading, his hands outstretched. Nora, let's talk, he says. Like we're still partners, like he didn't abandon me. I shake my head, my hand on my belly, feeling my daughter's kick, a quiet strength pulsing through me. There's nothing to say, I tell him, my voice firm but soft, like a door closing forever. Marcus pulls out my grandfather's will, its words clear, naming me heir, its ink a bond to this house. Tara snatches it, her eyes darting over the page, her breath quickening, then throws it down, her hands, shaking, her bravado gone. This doesn't mean anything, she snaps, but her voice cracks, betraying her. I see Edith outside, watching through the window. Her nod a silent anchor, her presence steadying me. The room feels smaller, the walls echoing my grandfather's memory, his calloused hands fixing this house, his belief in me woven into its beams. Caleb tries again, softer now, his voice almost desperate. I had no choice, Nora. I needed the money. I stare at him, his words empty, and feel a cold clarity sharp as winter air. He's not sorry, just caught, exposed. Marcus gathers his papers, saying, we'll go to court tomorrow, his confidence a steady hand on my shoulder. I nod, my throat tight, my resolve unbroken, my heart steady. The house creaks around us like it's holding its breath, waiting for the next move, its walls standing with me. I'm Nora, 28, sitting at the courthouse, the wooden bench cold beneath me, its grain rough under my fingers. Marcus is beside me, flipping through papers, his pen tapping softly, a steady rhythm. The judge's gavel echoes a sharp crack as Caleb stands across the room, his shoulders hunched, avoiding my gaze, his face pale under the courtroom's harsh light. Tara's gone vanished last night, leaving a note saying she's done with this mess. Her handwriting jagged on a torn scrap left on the table like an afterthought. Marcus leans close, whispering, the forged deed won't hold up. We've got this. But my eyes are locked on Caleb, his hands fidgeting, the man I once loved, now a stranger in a wrinkled shirt, his eyes hollow. The Judge Margaret calls us forward, her voice steady but kind, her glasses catching the courtroom's dim light, her presence grounding. She reads my grandfather's will aloud, each word tying me to this house. Its weathered boards and creaking floors, a legacy I'm claiming. Caleb's lawyer stammers, offering no real defense. His papers a weak shield, his voice faltering. Margaret's eyes soften as they rest on my belly, then harden as she turns to Caleb, her tone sharp, cutting through the room's quiet hum. "You drained her account," she says, her voice like steel. "Explain." He mumbles about debts, his voice thin, unconvincing, his eyes darting to the floor, unable to meet hers. My chest tightens. Not with anger, but with a hollow ache, like losing something I never fully had, a dream I built on sand. I think of our whispered plans, late nights dreaming of a family now scattered like dust, gone with his footsteps. The judge rules in my favor, the house is mine. Her gavel final, a sound that settles in my bones. Marcus pats my shoulder saying, "You did it, Nora." His voice warm but restrained, his hand steady. As Caleb slinks out, not looking back, his shadow fading through the door, I feel no triumph, only a quiet void, heavy as the air before a storm. My hand rests on my belly. The baby still, like she feels the weight too. Hannah arrives, her car pulling up, outside tires crunching on gravel, and she hugs me. Her arms fierce, her jacket smelling of city rain and home. "We'll rebuild," she says, her voice steady, a promise I cling to. I can't speak, my throat thick with unspoken grief. I walk to the courthouse steps, clutching my grandfather's journal, its pages worn from my touch. Its leather soft against my fingers, a tether to my past. The sky is gray, heavy with coming rain, mirroring the quiet sorrow inside me. I won the house, but Caleb took more than money. He took the trust I had in myself, leaving a hole I'm only beginning to fill. I stand there, the wind cold on my face, feeling the emptiness of what's left, wondering how I'll make it whole. I'm Nora, 28, kneeling in the dirt behind my grandfather's house, my hands sinking into the cool earth, soft and damp from morning dew, the scent of soil grounding me. The house is mine now, its walls no longer a battleground but a quiet refuge, its roof shielding me from the past, its beams holding my future. I found a packet of marigold seeds in the shed, their paper envelope brittle, labeled in my grandfather's neat handwriting, a relic of his care, a promise kept. I scatter them in a small patch by the back steps, picturing their golden blooms come spring bright against the weathered wood, a splash of color for my daughter. She kicks inside me, a gentle nudge like she's planting roots, too part of this new beginning. Hannah's inside hammering nails into a loose porch rail, her laughter drifting through the open window, a sound I'd forgotten I loved, warm and familiar. She's been here a week, sleeping on a cot, helping me scrub grime from windows, her hands steady as we make this place ours. I stand brushing soil from my hands, the dirt clinging to my skin, and walk to the edge of the property where a narrow trail winds into the woods, its path dappled with light. The air smells of pine and damp leaves, crisp and alive, and I follow it, my steps slow, deliberate, my sneakers crunching on twigs, each sound a small claim. I think of my grandfather's stories, how he'd walk this trail telling me to listen to the wind when life got heavy, his voice rough but kind, his eyes bright with wisdom. I stop by a creek, its water gurgling over smooth stones, and sit on a fallen log, its bark rough under my fingers, grounding me. I let myself breathe, really breathe for the first time in months, the air filling my lungs with something new, clean. I've been running on anger, on fear, but here, surrounded by trees, their branches swaying softly, I feel something softer, like a wound beginning to heal, tender but mending. I pull a small notebook from my pocket, bought from a dollar store in town, its pages crisp, and start writing, not a journal like my grandfather's, but a letter to my daughter, my words careful, deliberate. I tell her about this house, about the man who built it, about the strength it takes to start over, to rise from ruin. The words come slow, each one a step toward peace, a stitch in the fabric of my heart. Edith's voice carries from the yard, calling me back for lunch. her tone warm, familiar, a neighbor who's become family. I smile, tucking the notebook away, and walk toward the house, the creek song fading behind me. The weight of Caleb's betrayal lighter now, like a shadow I can step out of, leaving it behind. I'm Nora, 28, sitting on the back steps of my grandfather's house, a chipped mug of tea warming my hands, its steam curling in the evening air, the scent of chamomile soothing. The sun dips low, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges, the marigold patch I planted glowing faintly in the fading light, their petals catching the last rays. Hannah's laughter fades as she heads inside to cook dinner, her footsteps light on the creaking floorboards, her presence a comfort I'd lost for too long. I pull out the notebook, my letter to my daughter half finished, and add a line. You'll fall, but you'll rise stronger, my hand steady as I write. I think of Caleb's letter sent last week, his apology scrawled in hasty ink, begging forgiveness, words that felt empty even as I read them, their weight irrelevant now. I tucked it away unopened, since a relic of a life I've left behind. I walked to the old oak tree by the fence, its branches heavy with summer leaves, their edges catching the last light, swaying gently. My fingers trace its bark, rough and steady, a living record of time. I pull a pocket knife from my bag, a gift from my grandfather when I was 10, its blade dulled but precious, its handle worn smooth. I carve my initials, NS, beside his, a quiet vow to stay, to root myself here, to build something lasting. Sadie, the shopkeeper, offered me a job today, just a few hours a week, enough to buy diapers and paint for the nursery, a small step toward stability. I said yes, feeling a spark of possibility, a door creaking open. I sit back on the steps, the mug cool now, and watch a firefly flicker in the dusk, its light fragile but persistent, a tiny beacon. My mother called this morning, her voice hesitant, asking to visit, her words careful, like stepping on thin ice, testing the waters. I said maybe not ready, but not closed off, a boundary I'm learning to hold firm, but not unkind. The baby kicks a steady rhythm, and I rest my hand on my belly, whispering her name, Lila, for the first time aloud, the sound soft in the quiet evening. It feels right, like a piece clicking into place, a name that carries hope. The house creaks behind me, solid, alive with new memories, its walls holding me up steady and sure. I don't need Caleb's regret or Tara's defeat to move forward. I have this land, this life growing inside me, and a strength I didn't know I had, deep and quiet. The stars begin to peek through the sky, faint, but growing brighter, and I close my eyes, letting the quiet wrap around me, a blanket of peace. I'm Nora, 29 now, rocking my daughter Lila in a crib I painted pale blue, the morning light filtering through curtains I sewed from old fabric found in the attic, their pattern faded but soft. It's been a year since I stood on that dusty road, broken with nothing but a backpack and a fading hope, my heart raw. The house hums with life now, its walls patched, the floors swept clean, the air smelling of fresh paint and possibility, a home reborn. I wake early these days, brewing coffee in a pot I found upstairs, its handle worn from years of use, its weight familiar in my hands, a ritual that grounds me. Lila gurgles, her tiny hands grabbing at the air, her eyes bright with curiosity, a spark that lights my days. I smile, my heart fuller than I ever thought it could be, a quiet joy settling in. Hannah stayed for months, helping me sand down old furniture, her quiet company mending the rift between us, her hands steady as we polished the dining table, its scratches telling stories of family. I work part-time at Sadie's shop, ringing up groceries, chatting with locals who've become friends, their faces familiar, their stories weaving into mine, a community growing around me. The marigolds bloomed this spring, a burst of gold by the steps, and I tend them daily, their scent sharp and grounding, a reminder of small victories of growth. I walk to the mailbox each morning, a routine that feels like a quiet triumph. My steps steady on the gravel path. The crunch under my shoes, a rhythm of my own making. Edith stops by sometimes, bringing homemade jam, her stories of my grandfather filling gaps in my memory, painting him as a man who built not just a house but a life, his kindness a thread I'm weaving into my own. I've started a small vegetable garden, tomatoes and zucchini sprouting in neat rows, each plant a promise I'm keeping to myself, to Lila a future I'm planting. Her first birthday is tomorrow, and I've invited Marcus, Edith, and Sadie for cake, a quiet celebration in the living room, where I once faced Tara's smirk, now just a faint echo. My mother's coming too, our first visit since I set boundaries. Her voice softer on the phone, now tentative but hopeful, a bridge we're building slowly. I sit by the window, Lila asleep in my arms, her breath soft against my chest, and watch the breeze stir the trees, their leaves whispering secrets. The pain of Caleb's betrayal hasn't vanished, but it's quieter, like a bruise fading under skin less sharp with time. I'm not the woman who trusted too easily, who ignored the warnings, who let love blind her. I'm stronger not because I won, but because I chose to stay, to build, to love my daughter fiercely, to choose myself. The house creaks softly and I close my eyes, letting the moment hold me whole and still. I'm Nora, 29, standing in the kitchen, Lila's laughter echoing as she toddles after a wooden spoon I gave her to play with, her steps wobbly but determined, her giggles filling the room. The house smells of vanilla from the cake I baked for her birthday, its icing uneven but made with love, the batter streaked with my hope. A labor of joy. I've started a new habit, sitting at the table each evening sketching plans for a small nursery in the spare room. Nothing grand. Just a corner with a rocking horse and books I've collected from yard sales, their pages worn but full of stories, their covers soft from use. Marcus stops by, his briefcase swapped for a gift for Lila. A tiny knit blanket, soft and warm, its stitches careful and kind. He shares a story about my grandfather teaching him to fish by the creek, his voice warm with memory, and I realize I'm carrying forward a legacy of quiet kindness, of showing up for others. A thread I'm weaving into my life. I've been mentoring Reese, a young woman from town who lost her way after a bad breakup, her eyes carrying the same hurt I once knew, her voice soft with doubt. We talk over coffee at Sadie's shop, the steam rising between us, and I see my old self in her, trusting too much, hurting too deep. I tell her it's okay to stumble, that the fall teaches you to stand taller, my words steady, drawn from my own scars, my own rise. My mother's visit today was careful, her hands nervous as she held Lila, her smile fragile but real, a flicker of the woman who raised me. I didn't forgive her fully, but I let her stay, a small step toward peace. A bridge we're building slowly, brick by brick. As I light the candles on Lila's cake, their flames flickering, casting soft shadows, I think about what I've learned. Betrayal doesn't just break you, it shows you where your strength lies, a light in the cracks. It's not about winning or being right, but about choosing yourself every day, even when it's hard, even when the world feels heavy. I learned to trust my own heart, to build a life not on promises from others, but on my own stubborn hope, unyielding and fierce. Lila claps, her eyes bright, her laughter a melody, and I know I'm enough for her, enough for myself. What's the hardest lesson life taught you about trusting yourself? I'd love to read your stories in the comments, to hear how you found your way. If this journey moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone searching for light. Thank you for being here, for listening, for walking this path with me. Here's to finding light in the quiet moments, to rising again.